2023 Board of Waterworks Trustee meeting. We'll go ahead and get started today with our consent agenda, which includes the minutes from September 26, 2023 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, the minutes from the October 3rd, 2023 Finance and Audit Committee meeting, the minutes from the October 10th, 2023 Planning Committee meeting, as well as the financial statements, the list of payments for September 2023, the summary of CEO approved expenditures in excess of $40,000, and our next meeting date of November 28th, 2023. Anything in there, Ted, that you would like to call our attention to?
Nothing from me, Andrea, unless someone has a question.
There a motion to adopt or to approve the consent agenda?
So,
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Our next agenda item is the public comment period. We generally reserve this time for discussion on regional governance. I know we'll be discussing that at a few other places in the agenda today, but I want to take this time and offer this space for any additional points you'd like to point out.
Andrea, I would like to share just a couple of thoughts. Work on regional governance continues on almost a daily basis. I know the board saw the editorial in the Register on Sunday, which was very positive coverage of the concept and welcome coverage of what we're doing here. We've asked all of the communities who are potential members of Central Iowa Waterworks to pass what we're calling a resolution of intent, something that we have on our agenda today for your consideration. The city of Ankeny, the city of Clive, city of Polk City have all passed the resolution of intent already. Most of the other communities have indicated their intention to pass similar resolution early in the month of November. So we're making good progress and look forward to the discussion about our resolution later in the meeting.
I wanted to point out and celebrate you know, the fact that this does appear twice in our agenda for today, primarily when we pass this resolution of intent to participate. It's been a long road of which I've not even been here entirely for, and I feel like I have been here forever nowadays. So I just want to thank all of my fellow board members and our staff and our legal counsel and everyone that have gotten us to this point. And I will probably repeat this again a couple times throughout our meeting. But any other comments to be shared in the public comment period?
Yeah, I have a question as to process. We are passing, we're going to consider and likely pass this resolution of intent. When does the signing take place? Is anything additional required of us then?
Yes.
Or do we have to do it again or what?
Well, the process that we intend to follow is we're asking everyone to pass a resolution of intent, all of the communities who are potential members. Once we understand who all intends to participate based on passing the resolution of intent, we will have another action item on the board agenda in November. That item will be two-pronged. One, we will set a public hearing for the board meeting in December, where the asset transfer will actually happen. So we'll schedule a public hearing in November for December. In November, we'll also be approving the form of the agreement, which will be finalized in terms of who the members are, what all the financial numbers finish out to be once we know who's in and who's out. We'll be approving the form of the agreement, which then in December, we'll have the public hearing to consider transfer of assets after the public hearing. We will consider transfer of assets and, assuming everything goes as planned, the board will authorize execution after December.
So everybody else will do that too?
The asset, anyone who is transferring assets has to do all three of those steps. The resolution that we're passing today is a non-binding resolution. I guess I would call it almost voluntary. We really want people to pass it. They don't have to. I think everybody is going to. But ultimately, if you're not transferring assets and you don't have to have a public hearing, you could just simply do the one thing in December, authorizing execution of the agreement by your entity. So everybody doesn't have to do the same steps. It depends on whether they're transferring assets or not. And the one thing that everybody has to do is authorize execution. Rick, did I miss anything there?
No, good. Check it out.
Because the numbers change depending on who's in and who's out.
That's correct.
So if somebody says, well, I'm not gonna do this step, then we won't know.
That's right. If communities don't pass a resolution of intent, we will be left to make our best guess as to whether they're going to participate or not. We're encouraging, we're pressing, we're letting them know that we need to know whether they're in or out. And we're hopeful that everyone will pass the resolution of intent, but frankly, there are a couple of communities that are still considering. We don't know whether they will pass the resolution or not. And I will say that if they don't pass the resolution of intent in time for us to approve the form of the agreement at our November board meeting, we will move forward under the assumption that they're our joint. And if they don't, we'll have to start over. Have to back up, update the agreement, recalculate, distribute it to everyone.
Okay.
So if communities don't pass the resolution of intent or tell us they don't intend to, there's a real possibility that it will delay and cause problems for us, but really don't have control over that.
What's the logic of if they don't sign it, we're gonna assume that they're in? Shouldn't we assume that they're out?
Well, the agreement as it sits right now assumes they're in. So we could go through the process of recalculating everything and taking them out and approving it, only to have them say, yes, we're in, and then we have to undo it. I think it's more streamlined and we believe that everyone was leaning towards participation. So I would prefer, and I would recommend that we remain optimistic and we lean towards everyone participating and leave everyone in unless they tell us they're out. And then if they decide after that that they're out, it upsets the apple cart. But I think we need to stay on track and press forward.
And I will add that, and I know you have a meeting with City Manager Johnson later this week. Diane and I met with the mayor and the City Manager of Johnston, and their target date for considering the resolution is November 20th.
Which is good. And there are a couple of others who we're hopeful they'll be done before the 20th. They'll have passed the resolution, but we don't know that they will. Most of the communities, I think there are just two who have said, well, we don't know if we can have it done by the 20th or not, or the 15th or not. Johnson.
Is West Des Moines the other one? Because of their
West Des Moines.
public.
West Des Moines has not given us specific feedback on whether they will pass the resolution intent or not. They may pass it on the 15th of November, or they may just skip that step.
And an explanation as to what Diane and I heard from West Des Moines, and it certainly made sense. They pulled out the document that they had shared with all of their citizens, talking about the Zoom meetings, the in-person meetings, all of these things, saying, and we will not take action until we complete these. So that is another layer that in their early communication, they didn't feel they should go back. That makes sense to me.
So when is their final input meeting?
I think it is right around the 15th.
I think they have one in December.
Public input.
December with a D? I mean, not that
Yes,
that
they
sounds like
sent us
November or
the-
October,
they
but.
Yes.
Yes.
Early December, they did send it to us.
I'll
It's on the
look.
website.
I guess I would add, I think they are considering whether they can accelerate or streamline, so that maybe some acceleration and stuff. I think for planning purposes, we can probably just assume.
Any other thoughts or comments to be shared during the public comment period, and or do we have any public here that would like to speak? I don't. Not hearing any, we'll move into our action items. Our first action item, sorry. Is the 2024 corporate insurance.
Andrew, every year we renew our insurance. We have a number of insurance coverages that are all listed there in the board packet. The renewal date for corporate insurance policies is November 1 this year, so November 1st. We'll renew our corporate insurance. This year, the overall insurance package, including all of those items, increase 9.7%, which is pretty well in line with what we're seeing in the market nationally. That is led by our property casualty insurance, which is actually going up about 15%. Then there are some other lines of insurance that are going up less. Cyber is a good example. After a 32% increase last year, we're looking at 6% increase this year, which is good.
But no change in coverage, right?
No change in coverage. That's correct. Work comp, as the board knows, we're self-insured for work comp. We do have excess liability, which the rate is actually less than it was. So overall, at 9.7%, not an unexpected increase for the package, and we recommend that we accept the insurance program submitted by Assured Partners.
So the request action is I'm looking for a motion to accept the insurance program renewal submitted by Assured Partners.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have a question, and I don't know if it's Amy or Donna, but certainly not for this year, but in future years, would it be worth it to look at a 2-year renewal? Would we maybe get better rates or more of a blending of what our costs are?
We have had that in the past. Cincinnati has given us that, our property and casualty lines. So kind of they look for that, Jack looks for that, if we can get it. We don't obviously go out too much further than that because the market just jumps a lot. So yeah, it just depends on the line, and if we can get a 2-year policy, we try to do it as best we can.
That's a good point too. And Don, if I'm not mistaken, there might be a couple of these lines in here that are actually 2-year.
Yep, the work comp excess policy is a 2-year policy. I think we're in the 2nd year of that. The reason the work comp changes is because our third-party administrator, those rates kind of fluctuate from year to year, but that was a 2-year policy. Cincinnati has been in the past 2-year policy, so yeah.
So that's a good point.
Thank you.
Said one other just information question. It seems that appears this is just a renewal of our current. Do we have any sort of every couple of years an RFQ or do anything to solicit additional bidding on this?
We do, I'll let Donna or Amy respond to that exactly. how that
I'll
works.
start and you can correct. We do go out for an RFP every so often, 5 years or so for a broker. And when was the last time we did that? We're probably due next year or two.
Yeah, I would say that we're probably up for it. I wouldn't say 2015, but I feel like it's after that. I don't know.
Yeah,
And
so yes, we do.
That's the broker.
Yeah.
But the broker shops.
Correct,
annually,
every
right?
year, right. And we've been pleased with Assured Partners for that's one.
What is terrorism?
Terrorism becomes an overreaching policy that kind of covers us in case if you don't subscribe to terrorism on your policies and there happens to be a terrorism event, then you're not covered. Then they'll basically say you didn't have coverage. And so for certain policies, you have to agree, and there's a premium for that. You have to agree to include terrorism on your coverage. Yeah. So of course we say yes.
So we have a motion to accept the insurance program renewal submitted by Assured Partners and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Great. Moving into item 3B, receive and file cost of service reports.
Andrea, the cost of service report was completed again this year by staff based on the model that Raftellus prepared for us here a few years ago, the new sort of forward-looking model that looks at our budgeted expenses and then formulates those into a cost of service, which we use for rates. The cost of service study was presented to the board at the October Finance and Audit Committee meeting. And today we are asking that the board receive and file that cost of service study.
I need a motion to do just that, receive and file the cost of service study.
Second.
Any additional comments from folks?
Yeah, I have a question. So, you know, at the end of the cost of service study, it says that those wholesale customers that do not join the CIWW will be subject to a change in their rate design. That's not what it says, but we will institute a new design for them. So Amy, can you tell us, first of all, are they aware of that? Second of all, will you tell us what we think will happen with that next year? Does that when we go to a more of a fixed fee and
Correct.
less of a?
Correct. This is a discussion that we've had for a number of years. Raftellus helped us with the analysis. And, you know, the objective, if you look at figure 14 on page 26 of the cost of service, while we are in alignment with costs and revenue between the classes, that purchase capacity class, there's a lot of intra-class inequity. Some people within that class are over recovering and others are under recovering. And we've always taken a look at it as a class. And Raftellus said, you know, we could improve that. So you might recall, we talked about that for a number of years. There was a lot of pushback, and it was a little distracting or disruptive, I would say, to the regionalization process. And so we said, look, you know, we will craft our rate principles for Central Iowa Waterworks with this in mind. Considering the real change was considering the peak day for each specific community and recovering more fixed costs. And so we have done that. The 2080 does incorporate those rate principles. And so it will be implemented effectively with Central Iowa Waterworks. We have not had specific discussions with Bondurant and Altoona yet. But we will want to, to advise them, this is how the rate structure will change. And we are confident that the change in the rate structure is allowed and still meets the language of the master agreement that we have with suburban customers. So, but to me, that is the next step, is to communicate that. And we have communicated it in the past,
I know.
not
I know.
directly
Because those
one-on-one.
two have said that they're not going
Right.
to join.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so next year when we implement the change,
Mhm.
are we gonna hear, oh, well, maybe we would have thought differently about this if we had realized this.
Or you're penalizing us for
Yeah.
not joining.
Yeah.
Cause am I understanding it right, that Altoona in particular, we're only recovering 22% of the actual cost, so if we.
Yeah.
Fix that, yes, I can't think of, the word I'm thinking of right now, that is
Fix the good.
Yeah.
reconcile, yeah, that's a big job.
I will say that they use PFM as their financial consultants, and PFM has integrated the principles that we will be implementing. And so their modeling and all of their scenarios have included, they should be aware, if nothing else, from their financial consultant. But a direct communication from us is appropriate.
Because if I understand from the memo, they don't have this latest cost of service. It says staff will distribute the cost of service to wholesale and total service customers.
Yes, once it's approved. I have presented the summary results at a technical committee. But they haven't read all the machinations of the numbers yet.
Right, so, we have a motion and second to receive and file the cost of service report. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same side. Moving on to 3C is approval of the proposed 2024 water rates.
Andrea, another topic that was covered at the finance and Operating meeting in October, based on the cost of service study that we just received and filed, and the work that was done there by staff, based on our projected expenses for the coming year, we are recommending, staff is recommending a 6% increase for most retail and wholesale customers. So almost all of our customers at Des Moines Waterworks, a couple of exceptions, we are proposing 10% rate increase for some outside city customers. It's a very small group of customers. Des Moines and in Pleasant Hill, I think in Pleasant Hill there might literally be 5 outside city customers. Polk County Rural Water District #1, which is Saylorville and Berwick, recommending 10% increases for each of those small customer groups. 3% in Johnston, which Johnston is the only with storage customer that we still have. They've never bought purchase capacity. Cost recovery, as you can see in the yellow there in the memo, cost recovery will stay very nearly 100% for all of the groups based on those rate increases, and we would recommend that the board approve those rate increases for various customer classes.
So we need a motion to approve the proposed rates according to the attached schedule to be effective for all water bills issued on or after April 1st, 2024, and direct staff to publish the adopted rates as provided by law.
So, second.
Any additional questions for discussions? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Moving into item 3D, proposed 2024 budget. We're going to establish a public hearing as the date of the November 2023 board meeting.
That's right, Andrea. This is the third in a series of items that were discussed at the very busy October Finance and Audit Committee meeting. The proposed budget for 2024 is based on total operating revenues of almost $92 million, 60.9 million operating budget dollars, which is a 4.7% increase over the current year, a $2.7 million increase, $69.4 million CIP, some of which will be funded from rate revenues, some of which will be funded as defined in the memo by borrowing participation of others. But what we're doing here today is simply establishing the date of the public hearing as the date of the November.
So I need a motion to establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the November 2023 board meeting to act on the approval of the 2024 budget and direct staff to publish notice as set forth in the board policy manual.
So
Second.
Any additional thoughts? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Moving on to item 3E is a resolution of intent to participate. Let me start over. I feel like this needs a little bit more spotlight. 3E is the resolution of intent to participate in authorizing the inclusion of the Des Moines Waterworks in final draft agreement establishing Central Iowa Waterworks.
Andrew, this is a big day, actually. Amy did such a great job of crafting this memo. I almost want to just read the whole thing, but I won't. But I do want to highlight a couple of things that are covered in the memo. We have really been talking about regional governance in earnest since 2017, which is a long time, and I don't think any of us thought it would take that long. This board approved the founding resolution in December of 2021, which basically said, hey, we want to be a part of this entity that's going to be created based on the principles that were laid out in the outcomes document that we put together working with Urbandale and West Des Moines. Over the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, a 2080 agreement has been drafted, reviewed, and revised by 13 different communities across the metro. That the agreement is in nearly final form as we sit here today. And in order to finalize the agreement completely, we need each entity to let us know whether they are going to participate or whether they're not. And as we discussed earlier, we've asked each entity to pass a resolution of intent to participate so that we can take that list of entities that are in and finalize the financial numbers and circulate the final agreement, the final version of the agreement in November for eventual hopeful execution in December. Now, this is still a preliminary action. It's signaling that it is our intent. We will still have opportunity for public input. We have a public input session scheduled, a Zoom session scheduled on the 14th of November. Have opportunity at our board meeting and then have a public hearing at the December meeting. So this is not the final step, but it's an important step. And we are asking that the board pass the resolution of intent to participate.
So I need a motion to pass the resolution of intent to participate and authorizing the inclusion of the Des Moines Waterworks in final draft agreement establishing Central Iowa Waterworks.
So
I'll jump in and say that the resolution is actually a detailed form that's included in the board materials.
To grant sanction.
We have the resolution being shared on the screen, and for those joining remotely, any other questions or comments at this time?
I have a couple questions. One is I attended the first public informational meeting, but I think you've had 2 more. What kind of feedback?
Well, the one that you attended recently was the third one.
That was the third one that I went to.
We had two other sessions, prior to that, after the first or second draft of the agreement, and they were very lightly participating, attended. And we didn't have a significant amount of feedback following those. We had more feedback at the most recent one, which was primarily positive, as you know, having been there. But we haven't gotten a lot of additional feedback since then.
If we haven't already, Ted, can we make sure that this resolution is easy to find on the website? Absolutely, maybe pull it out somehow, or, I mean, I think we have a regionalization thing, but somehow make it even easier to find.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me, if the city council has taken any supporting action?
The council has not yet taken any supporting action, but they've indicated a willingness to consider that in November. So we are working, Melissa, is probably online. Yeah. Melissa is working with their PR folks on I guess.
So they don't need to pass this resolution, they're not, but it's a supportive type of resolution.
That's correct. It's absolutely.
Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you to Ted. The credibility that you have with all of our suburban customers and the trust that we've been able to garner has just really made a difference. In Amy, the way that you have so willingly gone out on various financial models, taken all of the information from the consultants. I mean, there's a lot of people to thank, including Rick Malone, for all of his diligent work. Everyone in this room has been involved, but the three of you, just thank you very much for always making this a priority. I don't know that we would be here without you three individuals doing what you've done, and it's so nice to be visiting with our suburban customers now and hear them saying nice things about Des Moines Water Works and our leadership and our plans in the future. So thank you.
So we have a motion and a second to pass the resolution of intent to participate and authorize the inclusion of Des Moines Water Works in the final draft agreement establishing Central Iowa Water Works. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very exciting. Item 3F, approval of settlement of main rate lawsuits.
Andrea, I think the board is aware that in April of 2022, we had a contractor bore into a 24-inch ear main along Northeast 14th Street as part of the DOT's construction project when they were widening Northeast 14th Street up there north of Interstate 8035. Des Moines Water Works incurred about $150,000 worth of expenses related to that repair, but the contractor disputed their responsibility for paying for that. We worked with them, but ultimately we did file suit against the contractor in December of 2022. And more recently, here in September, we went through mediation with that contractor, and a settlement has been proposed where the contractor will pay us $100,000 of that $150,000. Staff recommends that the board accept that settlement to avoid litigation over the matter. We did notice that we could go into closed session. The board is interested in talking about that in more detail, but at this point, staff would recommend that we accept that proposal.
I would just note that the agreement has not yet been executed by the counterparties, so if you have detailed questions about strategy or settlement rationale, we should probably go into closed session, just so that that's not publicly disclosed before the deal is actually done. But what Ted just recited is factually accurate, and a matter of public record way, so there's nothing's been revealed there.
So for process, would I be looking for a motion and a second before we discuss whether or not we're going into closed session? Or-
if the board members want to go into closed session, then yes, there should be a motion and a second to go into closed session. And debate about whether or not we should go into closed session.
But I can do this motion first.
If I would suggest before we move to adopt the resolution, if there's a reason to go into closed session, if people want to talk about the settlement
Okay.
proposal, we should do that. Then we can come out of closed session, and if there's a motion to approve the settlement, then we can have it at that time.
Does anybody have any questions or reason to want to go into closed session?
I have a couple of questions, but
We can ask them and we can see if, I would recommend we go into closed session.
I know this is a settlement of the amount. The question was whether or not, I see in here that our locate was off, where it should have been. My question just had, and I assume that was the dispute. in there. Maybe this is a question for Ted, and it's just a generic question. That seems off quite a bit. What's the process that are we generally off with that? I don't,
We generally are not
yeah.
off that much. We do a lot of work to ensure that our locates are on. We have measurements, we have tracer wire, we have sophisticated equipment that helps us get the locates right. In this case, we were in the middle of an active construction zone. They had already repaved the side of the street that the water main laid under. And so some of the landmarks that we would have used to help us locate it were gone and replaced, or the landscape was a little different. I don't know, Kyle, do you know if there was tracer wire?
The tracer wire had been cut at some point through there, so they were not able to use their normal methods for tracing, where they had to use a different method called induction. And induction picked up another nearby utility the signal jumped onto, and that's what they picked up.
So there was an investigation done as to.
Absolutely. And Iowa One Call has standards that say if you're within, I think it's 18 inches, Kyle, isn't that the, if you're within 18 inches and somebody hits you, it's still their fault. You have kind of a window because it's hard to see underground. This pipe is pretty deep. It just makes, there are a lot of challenges there. So you have this 18-inch window. We were kind of right on the edge of that, or we were greater than that. Greater. So, yeah, we were off, but it's unusual for us to be off more than that. That was part of the question.
Do we need to pass this motion for more of these questions, or?
I don't have any. It's just.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into reasons why ultimately didn't matter in our judgment case, but otherwise, I think that's a good process question to understand the locate process,
So I'm gonna throw it out there. Someone's confident and wants to make a motion to accept the settlement proposal and to authorize staff to execute the settlement and release agreement with Hallbrook and Trenchless.
So
Second.
Any other discussion? Does this warrant a roll call vote, or can we just all in favor? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item 3G, acceptance of gallery valve chamber structure reconstruction phase 2.
Andrea, this is the second phase of a project that rebuilt all of the gallery manholes throughout the park. I'm sure you've all noticed that the kind of deteriorating concrete structures throughout the park have been upgraded, replaced, rehabilitated with new structures and safety railings on top of them, so that when our staff gets up there, they're safer. This project is complete. It was completed without the need for any change orders. So we're looking for the board to accept the project completed by Nate Todd Construction LLC in the amount of the original contract, which was $498,750.
looking for a motion, to accept the Gallery Valve Chamber Structures Reconstruction Phase 2 project completed by Nate Todd Construction LLC and the amount of $498,750. Second, any, discussion?
I was just glad to see the guardrail around the one that's real close to the road here.
Yeah, did you see they painted it?
I did.
So it's-
Looks pretty, but I'm glad it's there.
It is,
I do apologize. Who's seconded? Okay, Diane.
I did.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item 3H, request authorization to execute the First Amendment, Chapter 28E agreement with the City of Ankeny for construction and funding of the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant North Feeder Main.
Andrea, the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant North Feeder Main is a project that was actually constructed in 2007. And we constructed a shared feeder main with the City of Ankeny so that we owned a portion of the capacity in that main and the City of Ankeny owned a portion of the capacity. We used our capacity to serve a part of unincorporated Polk County and Saylorville, and obviously a portion to serve Ankeny. But as demands have increased in that area, it became necessary for more capacity, more water main capacity to be constructed going north out of the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant. So here more recently, just in the last few years, Moines Waterworks and the City of Polk City actually constructed a new 20-inch line, goes up through that same corridor, constructed a new booster station, Polk City Booster Station, which we've talked about before. It's a great project, built like a house, looks like a house, it's right into the neighborhood up there. And we've subsequently put that into service so that now our Polk County customers and Polk City are receiving water through that line booster station, which has freed up the capacity, that 24-inch main for Ankeny to use. But they needed to purchase that. So they needed to reimburse us for our investment in that. And so staff approached Ankeny last year. They discussed what the value of our capacity in that and have agreed on an amount, I think it was $603,150, provided that they pay us this calendar year. They have agreed to that price, and so we would ask that the board authorize execution of an amendment to that original 2080 agreement that would allow Ankeny to pay us that $600,000 and then receive the remaining capacity in that main for their use.
So I need a motion to authorize the motion to approve and authorize the chairperson to execute the First Amendment to the Chapter 28E agreement with the City of Ankeny for construction and funding of the Saylorville Water Treatment Plant North Feeder Main project.
So moved.
I think that's a second down there.
Yeah.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 3I, request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute professional services agreement with Snyder and Associates, Inc. for construction services for the Des Moines Water Works grounds maintenance facility.
Andrea, in June of this year, the board authorized staff to solicit bids for the grounds maintenance facility. We got 8 bids. We have that before the board. The board has awarded that work. And the construction is actually just getting started with a little bit of work over there, likely to get started at least here before too long. But we've talked about the size of our capital budget and the challenge that we have with staffing all of these capital projects with inspection, construction management perspective. And so engineering has identified this particular project as an ideal opportunity to consider bringing some outside help in from a construction inspection perspective. So they actually sought proposals from a number of different entities or individuals who might be able to provide those kind of construction services, and ultimately they have chosen Snyder and Associates as a local engineering consulting firm who does a lot of this kind of work. And are recommending that we enter into a professional services agreement with Snyder and Associates to do this construction inspection. Memo gives some detail. We're expecting a person for about half-time throughout the construction. This work would be done subject to the terms and conditions in the indefinite scope master agreement that we have already with Snyder Associates at projected cost of just over $111,000. So we're here today, ask for authorization to execute professional services agreement with Snyder and Associates for inspection and construction management of grounds maintenance.
So as Ted mentioned, we need a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute a professional service agreement with Snyder and Associates, Inc. in the amount of $111,322 for construction services for the Des Moines Waterworks grounds maintenance facility.
Second.
Third question. So what was the engineering firm that designed it?
SVPA is the architect, and they had a team of sub-engineers. Lindsay, do you know the subs?
I may, Bishop.
Okay.
They were one of the groups that we saw the proposal
Yeah.
from for doing the inspection, but it was not.
Correct. I feel like we're better hands with Snyder in this one.
And that's fine. I was just trying to follow the dots and thinking how Snyder is overseeing the design, construction of somebody else's work and somebody else's construction. Following.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So is this would be for work that otherwise we have been to do ourselves?
Correct. Our engineering technician group would typically do this kind of inspection. By taking this action, we can save those bodies for some water main work that we'd like to do. It's a task on that type of work. So this may not be the last time you see such a request. As Ted mentioned, we've got more aggressive capital spending. We're just trying to balance our own bandwidth against the demand that we're going to have with additional projects. So again, this is an excellent one to start with this concept. And again, we would like to be doing more of it.
One of the things that it does mention in the memo, and I didn't state, but it probably is worth stating, and that is that this project was picked specifically because it doesn't have a lot of interaction with our treatment process or distribution system. So it's kind of isolated, and they can manage it off to the side. And we can have our own folks overseeing and managing projects that do interact with our treatment processes and our distribution system, or coordination with our control center and our existing staff is much more critical. But those things are really kind of our bread and butter. You know, we do them every year, almost continuously. Water main replacement is almost a year-round thing. We don't build a lot of these. We don't do it nearly as much architectural work. Snyder and Associates is very well versed in that kind of work. There's synergy there.
Another just curiosity question, do you happen to know what the cost difference is from doing it in-house versus going outside?
Oh, this math, you're on the spot.
Is it significant? Is it?
Yeah, that was gonna be kind of my question too. I would assume the flexibility given to us by going to an outside, where there's a premium we have to pay. I'm just curious, yeah, like, we know what that is.
Just trying to, Lindsay, you have I know it's 20 hours a week. Did we put the number of weeks in here?
For some reason I had, no. 20 hours.
Yeah, I don't think we documented the number of weeks in here. I will offer this, getting their help. It's less than 3% of construction costs of the facility itself. So,
Sure.
but that was a factor we were looking at.
Well, and again,
20 hours per week.
but I don't have the executed.
Well, I think it was, so it's 111,000, and it was 40 hours for project manager, and the rest of the hours were for the construction observer, which wasn't the bulk. So if we can probably figure that out, but I think you're gonna pay more for this than if we paid our staff. I don't think it's a huge difference if you look at just the full benefits and, you know, if you consider the total cost of an employee, you know, hours, but there is more cost.
Well, I can't cite the exact number, I completely agree with Liz. We are not paying less.
Right.
Than paying for this outside resource, we know that. The delta, we're minus that in this moment, but, yeah, that's a fact, we'll pay more for these 20 hours a week than we pay for our own folks.
Right.
But as part of this, if those engineers are allowed to move on and start to work on some of the more critical things that we're hoping to be able to move ahead, that we may not have additional costs in that regard because we can get after that work faster.
With the staff we have, we're gonna pay more for certain tasks sooner or later, so yes, I would agree with that too, so.
I think it's also important to know that the budget that we set a public hearing for includes another engineering tech. So we're trying to grow the staff a little bit. We're getting outside help. We have to be very creative to tackle a $70 million capital budget. And so we don't feel like we can add enough staff all at once. I mean, we can't add 10 more engineering techs all in 1 year. Where would we put them first in all of them? But that's what it would take for us to do all of this work. Right. So as Mike said, you're going to see more of this. And yes, it is going to cost us more money, but it's the right thing to do as opposed to trying to staff up all in one big explosion. But a year from now, we'll probably bring you another budget that has more bodies as we try to balance this in right size, what we think is going to be the future.
Let's get that in the minutes.
Yeah, and I would, that's not a question, not an overlay of saying like, is this a good decision or not? It's just more of a frame of reference of like, is this a 10% premium, 50% premium, like you want to 50%, you know, ballparks of it. I think it's good for us as a board and as an organization to keep those numbers fresh as we start to evaluate this more. But I agree, I think I would assume this is definitely the right decision. It probably will be going forward.
Agreed, and that was the foundation of my question, as well as, you know, we have a budget that we're bringing to the board next month. What are we accounting for the opportunity to do this more in the budget? If it is, and you know, if we've already budgeted our projects assuming such a cost, and now we're going to be adding a 20% premium because we're realizing that we need to maybe get some outside help, is that accounted for in the budget, or is it going to be such a small number of a premium that it's not going to make a big difference?
Yeah, it's a 10%, 20% premium on 3% of the cost. Because this is a multi-million, it's almost a $4 million project. And so if there's $20,000 in there of premium, which is kind of the ballpark I would throw out, is we can't do this for 1%. We never inspect a project for 1%. We might be 2.5%. They're at 3%. So you're talking.
The budget is
20,000.
padded enough to support doing this more often.
Yes, yes, it is. We can't budget that close. We always end up kind of shifting things around a little bit, but budget will be able to absorb that. And if we have to do more of it, more of it is probably going to look like ASR wells and treatment plant expansions and some of these really big projects that are having other people design. And those budgets have that kind of contingency within them that I think will cover doing more of this, as we also continue to look at what's the right path, growing staff, all of this. Right.
Yeah, and some of the PSAs that we've already entered into an agreement with include some project representation, so they are in our budget. There will be others where Ted is very correct. this premium we're talking about, we're not gonna budget that narrow.
Right.
So we've got a large mountain to climb, and we're gonna certainly need to get creative to get to the top.
Right.
But some of these, honestly, smaller things there's just enough cushion in there to get enough back and forth between estimates and true cost. And
Right.
we don't feel like we're on a slippery slope here.
It would be interesting though, moving forward, to track how much money we spend, using outside consultants in this type of work that would have previously been done in-house as we look in the future to additional staff needed. And being able to measure how much we spent versus what it would have taken to hire an additional staff person and how that might make sense or not.
Those will be fuels for the 2025 budget prep.
Right.
Our discussions about what staff requests we need to make.
Right.
This can be a small part of that.
Great.
I also think if regionalization proceeds, then we'll have a chunk of money that we're gonna need to spend. Hopefully on distribution mains and those kinds of things. And what kind of additional staff or staff for that over what period of time?
And, you know, we've been anticipating that for a while. And we are having some consultants do designs for us and do construction services for us to see if that's gonna work for us, or if we wanna try to staff up. There's a mountain out there. I don't think we can staff up fast enough to climb that mountain. So I think we'll be looking at more and just try to put consultants in the right place, and this just happens to be an ideal place.
So we have a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute a professional service agreement with Snyder and Associates Inc. for the amount of $111,322 for construction services for the Des Moines Waterworks ground maintenance facility. All in favor? Any opposed? Our next item, 3J, is the request permission to establish the date of a public hearing for environmental review of aquifer storage and recovery, well as the date of the December 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, we had a public hearing for an environmental review fairly recently on another project that was going to be SRF funded. I think we're going to see more of these as we continue to lean into the SRF funding a little more than we have historically. But this particular project is the aquifer storage and recovery well that the board authorized us to enter into a professional services agreement for in December 2022. We do intend to use SRF funding for this project, and part of the SRF funding requirements is that the Iowa DNR can conduct an environmental review for that project. Once the environmental review is complete, the borrower, which is us, is required to have a public hearing to share the outcome of that environmental review with the public. DNR has completed their environmental review for this project, and now we need to schedule a public hearing to share DNR's conclusion that the project poses no significant environmental impact. So we're here today to ask the board to establish the date of a public hearing for review of that environmental review as the date of December 2024.
So we need a motion to establish the date of the December 2023 board meeting as the date of the public hearing for environmental review of the aquifer storage and recovery ASR well project.
So
Any discussion?
I just have a question. Why are we waiting till December to do it?
the December board meeting, the October board meeting, which is today, is not 30 days before the November board meeting. So we have to,
All right.
Just for the next item.
that is exactly correct.
So we have a motion and second, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? So item 3K, a request authorization for CEO and general manager to execute. Right, yes. Yes, okay. Authorize, CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. for Saylorville Water Treatment Plant capacity expansion design and construction services.
Andrew, we have a public professional services agreement with HDR and Black and Beach for design of the expansion of the Saylorville water treatment. They are working on that design in earnest as we speak, and they have concluded as part of their initial evaluation of the well field up there and the hydraulic model that we are using, that USGS created for us, and some of their investigations, that it would be prudent for us to conduct some comprehensive 72-hour constant rate pump tests in the locations where we believe we may be installing radial collector wells. They believe that that's prudent because there's significant variability in the availability of water within that aquifer in the area where we are going to build radial collector wells. They think that there are some really conservative parameters built into the model that they are using from USGS. And they want to make sure that once we pick a spot and we decide how many wells we're going to build, that we can get the water that we think we're going to get. So they are recommending, they're recommending to us, and we're recommending to you that we authorize a change order that would allow them to conduct up to 3 comprehensive 72-hour constant rate pump tests. So they will literally hire a well drilling contractor who will go to the field, install a temporary well, and pump that thing for 72 hours and gather all of the geophysical data that they need to help them ensure that we're going to have the water that we need to build the radial collector well there. Then they would use that data, analyze that data, and inform the design of the well field that we're going to build for this expansion. They will also do all the coordination with the Army Corps of Engineers, whose property it is that we're on and want to build our collector wells with. Not an insignificant cost here, though. The estimate for 3 wells and concentrated pump tests is $825,000. We've negotiated that with them, and we are requesting authorization to execute an amendment to their professional services agreement that would allow them to facilitate this testing.
So we need a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $825,000 for the SWTP capacity expansion project.
So moved.
second,
I have a question, and I apologize that I do not know the answer, and I mean no offense in asking this question. But wouldn't we have been sure that there would have been enough water here before we would have identified this area for a new well field?
We're pretty confident that there's enough water in this area that runs from Interstate 8035 up to Saylorville Reservoir, but that's a big area. And what they're seeing is that there's a lot of variability in that area in terms of how much water you can get at a specific site. And so they want to identify a couple of specific sites and put these wells in and pump test them to make sure that they're picking the specific sites within that large area. And Lindsay or Kyle or Mike, what would you add to that?
Before you add, sorry, so we just gave them this area and said, build us wells, and they want to feel more confident where they're doing it.
The big question becomes, how many wells do you need? Each of these wells are multi-million dollars, so we want to make sure we're placing the wells where we're going to get the highest yield. To ultimately reduce the number of wells needed and the number of miles of transmission main needed for that. And so part of this study is zeroing in that area. Well, where are we going to get the highest yield for each of these wells so we can minimize the number of wells that we need? So I don't think there's a lot of question on not enough water. It's how many wells do we need and how big of area do we need to capture? And we want to do a bid package that gets us the redundancy that we need, but not overpopulate and spend millions of dollars extra. And so this is giving us confidence in the number of wells that we need. This was also shared in great detail with the technical committee. And this will be, as part of the 2080 agreement, will be transferred over and become Central Iowa Waterworks debt. It was unanimously voted from the technical committee's perspective that we needed to do this as well. So I just share that.
So I have kind of a follow-up question to that I don't understand. Then what if they sink these three and they don't get the results? Then do we need to be sinking more to find where they could get it? Could this be the startup? And I mean, assume they're using data to kind of zero in on this, and this is an insurance, but I don't, what are they measuring it against on what they expect for flow?
So they have a groundwater model that USGS provided that they had to basically, that was a regional model. And then Black and Beach is working on a localized model for this area, right? Of where we're gonna put these wells. Well, the assumptions made in the regional model and what we're seeing in the existing wells. So we have the two wells that serve Saylorville. There's a big difference in the connectivity or how the water flows and how the aquifer refills. And so that's really what we're measuring against is, okay, they had to make some assumptions when they calibrated. Well, is that accurate? Is that for the whole area? And so they have these models and we've placed them, like we went with the Army Corps to look at the different sites to make sure we had access. And then, we'll do some integral tests, which are some just really short term, but to make sure that the aquifer is refilling at the rate it needs to give us this yield, like Kyle said, we really have to do these pump tests. Now, if we find that, let's say we do a couple and it's, our assumptions are valid, well, then we can say that we're done, we're good with the rest of our assumptions. But we thought for schedule purposes to get it approved in advance and with Lane, having to mobilize and whatnot, if we get it approved in advance, then if they have to go do another test, they can do it while they're here.
So if our assumptions are bad, they'll go and do another test.
Yeah. And we have one of these pump tests we've done down at Prospect Park. And I think they did one north.
By the plant.
Yeah, by Saylorville. So they've done a few of these already. But this will give us that more in the area where we would plan to build.
These tests help calibrate the model to give them confidence that they're building the right amount of wells in the best bedding places to give us our most yield for the dollar.
It's like good due diligence to confirm the assumptions.
One key objective of the plant expansion is to be able to produce 20 MGD across the calendar year. That is a primary objective of that. So the preliminary engineering was not there projected. We needed 4 additional wells. We're still remaining optimistic of that, but to not have the raw water, we're going to strand expenses at the treatment plant. We have treatment at the plant that can do 20. We have raw water that can only do 15. We've missed. And so if there's any ambiguity in the engineering and science here, it's really in this, the science of the geology here and the modeling. We've got some more work to do here.
So,
Be more
but this
confident.
was a step that was not anticipated in the original bid?
I would just say that HDR and Black Beach's proposal, and it was clear in their proposal to us that these types of sophisticated tests would likely not be needed. They had a different vision. Further research with the model changes their perspective.
Did the other proposals that we received include doing this work?
Only received one proposal.
We just got this low proposal.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we have a motion and second for the CEO and general manager to execute amendment 2 of the professional service agreement with HDR Engineering Inc. in the amount of $825,000 for the SWTP capacity expansion project. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3L, request authorization to solicit bids for the 2023 FWTP pump station HVAC upgrades and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, we've got an HVAC unit down on the filter plant at the Food Drive treatment plant that cools the kind of the office space there, the lunchroom, things, and the controls. And it was installed some time ago. It's actually a water cooled heat pump, so we run water through there, basically to waste to cool those spaces. We've had a lot of trouble with that, frankly, over the years. And it's been recommended that we replace, upgrade that unit. New units, which we're proposing to put in, will address some of the issues we've had with maintaining temperature and ventilation, comply with current building codes, be more energy efficient, reduce that water consumption, it will not be water cooled, and obviously reduce maintenance requirements of the equipment. Plan to install 2 different units, the 20-ton unit that will cool the majority of the space, and then a smaller unit that's intended to serve just the control center. The control center is continuously occupied, so it just has HVAC. IMEG is preparing plans and specifications for the project. The estimate is a little over $1.1 million for the project, and the staff recommends that the board authorize us to solicit bids for the project.
So I need a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the 2023 FWTP pump station HVAC upgrades project and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3M, request authorization to solicit bids for 2024 filter media replacement floor drive water treatment plant and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, we are going to completely replace all of the media and possibly the under drains and all of the filters at the fluid drive treatment plant over the next 2 or 3 years.
5 or 6.
5 or 6. I was being optimistic. We've got some pilot units over there right now. They're testing various filter media configurations. There's some good information in the board memo here. This is something that, filter media needs to be replaced about every 25 years. The time has come. It's probably the time has passed. But on much more infrequently, we do a more complete rehab of under drains and all that. That's an ongoing process. The pilot units are there. They're doing the study. They're going to get that information, and over the next several years, we will then upgrade all of the filters at the fluid drive plant. Right now, however, we're having some significant issues with 4 of the filters. And what we want to do is just go in there and remove and replace the filter, the sand that actually does the filtering. so that over the next several years, as we're doing this full-blown rehab, we don't continue to have problems with these 4 filters that have been kind of giving us fits here the last 2 or 3 years. So we're proposing to replace filter media beginning in January of 2024 and have it ready by summer of 2024. 4 of the filters there at the fluid treatment plant to get us through as we're doing all this analysis of the gap on the whole filter. So engineers estimate for filter media replacement on those filters is $840,000, and we're asking the board to authorize staff solicit bids for that filter media replacement support.
So I need a motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the 2024 filter media replacement floor drive water treatment plant project and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting.
So
Second,
Any further discussion?
I just have one question, obviously. I'm under the CIW. That's a lot of work. So is this something that is discussed in the technical committee? Okay. It'd probably be nice when we get summaries for this, just.
Reiterate that.
Yeah, to reflect it. Discuss that it's been discussed with the technical.
Any upgrades to our treatment facilities are discussed at the technical committee and shared with them before it's brought to the board. And the ones that have loans on them that will be transferred to the region, we actually do a roll call vote on those so we can document.
Excellent.
These projects are coming out of our budget as part of the water rates, and so they are certainly discussed. But the ones that there's a loan that they'll be responsible for paying, we do a roll call vote to also document everybody's engagement in that if there's any opposition to that.
Is there anybody that is not part of that technical committee that we anticipate joining the region
No, we've invited everyone that,
and everyone participates?
and most people come to most of the meetings to participate. But we don't have 100% participation all the time, but I said the vast majority. We have a good selection of people that are attending, but they're all invited. Minutes are shared with them, all of the PowerPoint presentations, the documents are emailed afterwards to all the participants. And then
How often are you meeting, Kyle?
once a month.
Kyle, is it mostly like city engineers that are?
It's a mix. Sometimes we'll have more than one person attend, like West Des Moines. There may be 2 people that come to the West Des Moines. From West Des Moines, it varies between engineers and administrators that are in it, and sometimes it's one person from the organization. Sometimes it'll bring 2 or 3, depending on what the subject is.
I was just thinking participation in that technical committee is probably a good illustration of those that are truly committed to furthering this effort and ensuring that it happens. So I was wondering how many the full representative there is showing up or not.
Well, and the technical committee has been meeting long before we had regional discussions. I mean, they,
It's almost a year that we've been meeting and talking through all of the things and we're also having them present on their distribution system and and so it's educating all of us on everyone's system. And so it's been a very great opportunity to be able to work together and hear everybody's systems and be able to share the projects that we're doing or the projects that West Des Moines or Polk City is doing on their facilities and things like that.
I think also most of those communities have not been producing water, so it's a really good way for them to understand the process and what goes into it.
For education.
So I have a motion and second on the table. If there are no other questions, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 3N, request authorization to solicit bids for the 2023 Des Moines water main replacement contract for and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, this is, the fourth in a series of water main replacements here for the city of Des Moines. There's a map there on the next page that shows that this work is kind of concentrated in the vicinity of Southeast Fifth and Park Avenue. There's a specific indication there of exactly how many feet, and what size on the street. Snyder and Associates is preparing plans and specifications for this project for us. The engineer's estimate, $1.677 million. And today we are asking the board to authorize staff to solicit bids for the project.
So I need a motion to authorize staff. Let me scroll the box. Authorize staff to solicit bids for the. Where am I at? Right here. Motion to authorize staff to solicit bids for the 2023 Des Moines water main replacement contract 4 and establish the date of the public hearing as the date of the December 2023 board meeting and direct staff to publish notice as provided by law. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second, any discussion?
The only question I have is we have all of these public hearings coming up in December.
Great, it's gonna be a problem.
And I was just wanting to make sure that we are going to have a quorum. So that meeting is Tuesday the 19th, correct? I have two different dates on my calendar. I have Tuesday the 26th and the 19th. Okay. Just with the holidays, I just thought I'd call everyone's attention to that because there's an awful lot of business on that December agenda. Amy, do you show a different date?
Did you say the 19th
Tuesday the 19th
of
of December.
of December? I was looking at November, I'm sorry.
Does anyone have a conflict with that date?
Okay. Big agenda.
Big agenda.
Okay, thank you.
If no other questions or discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Moving on to item 3O. Oh.
Don't remember no what it's worth. It's my
And a big one at that. This is the regional 28E review with a possible closed session. So if you want to give us an idea of what we'll be discussing, and then we can talk about.
There, we would like to discuss two items that we believe have implications in terms of final negotiation on 28E agreement. One of them relates to communities' investment in system and how they will or will not be reimbursed for that. And one relates to the financial true-up process that we've set up to calculate that value and how that is changing over time. So staff would like to board to consider discussing those items in closed session.
I think there's some value in discussing as much of this as we can in an open session. I mean, I think we want to make sure that our ratepayers understand how we arrived at numbers and what's been considered there. And I realize where it gets tricky is that we're going to get into a conversation about, offers and what we'd accept and that sort of thing. And so I guess I don't know what I'm exactly suggesting, Ted, but if there's a way we can kind of begin the discussion, on on what is really public facing, how the numbers were arrived and that sort of thing. And then maybe with Rick and John's guidance, if we get into a point where we're really feel like we're talking about negotiations, we can go to a closed session. If that's possible, if not, then tell me.
Well, let me start and we can,
Let's say on that, that if we're going to do anything and if, it requires some action coming out of closed session, you have to make a motion. And at that time, you have to explain what it is and take the vote.
Sorry, that might be that might be a more appropriate time to explain the background and logistics of it all. Because I guess I would say that I could support starting in closed session. Because if we choose to not take action, then
Then coming out,
Made
there's no
it.
action.
but we've I don't know how to say it in I don't know how to say it.
But I'm concerned if we start outside of closed session, that it then becomes difficult at what point.
Right.
we can do it.
yeah,
So I would,
I think that the premise here is that, you know, we're nearing the end of the negotiation process. We have the agreement in place, and there are a couple of communities who are interested in additional consideration for their participation. And I think it would be up to this board to decide whether there's willingness to consider additional consideration. And we
So-
can talk about what the considerations are, but I think it's going to be hard to separate what the considerations are from the negotiation position. of the
Right,
board.
right. That's a much better way of saying what I was muddling. So I would look for a motion. How do I read this motion? How do I suggest this motion? Do I have to
I
read
would
everything,
suggest,
or?
I think what you can say is you would suggest a motion for closed session on the grounds stated in the board agenda item.
Okay.
And we'll incorporate those into the minutes to reflect the grounds that were stated in the board memo as the grounds stated in the closed session.
Will help you.
So
So-
I think you could say,
Yes,
Andrea,
so-
I'm looking for a motion
Right,
to go into closed session for the grounds stated in the agenda item.
right. Do I need to actually repeat you, or can somebody just say they support John's comments?
Or adopt my
Motion.
statement as the question.
I move John's. I move that we go to closed session as stated in the board agenda as suggested by our council.
All in favor?
I'll take a roll call.
Or the, sorry.
Andrea,
Aye, yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Brad, Diane,
yes.
Sue. Yes.
So we will stop this Zoom session. Yep. And clear the room.